Hi everyone, welcome to Make It Monday. I'm Angie and today's project is stained glass watercolor. So this is what we're going to end up with. Maybe not this exact design because everybody will be able to choose their own design. But when we're done, you'll end up with a piece that looks like this. It's 8 by 10 and it's done on watercolor paper. So this idea stemmed from an Instagram post that I saw by andrea.nelson.art, and I thought it was the funnest thing, and I thought, well, how can I do this in my own way? And so this is what I came up with. So first of all, we're going to need some watercolor paper. So I'm going to set this off to the side for right now. The watercolor paper that I'm using is Canson XL watercolor paper. It's 140 pound. You definitely need to use watercolor paper with this. Watercolor paper is made so that the colors will kind of flow up on top. And we'll get more into the painting part in part 2. So today what we're going to do is just transfer our design and do all the marker work. So that is where we're going to start. All right, so what I have, let me grab a couple things here, is a piece of watercolor paper that I cut down. It's 8 1/4 by 10 1/4, and I did that because when we paint, we're going to need to be able to tape it down. So I wanted to give ourselves a little bit of extra room. And then once it's all painted, we can trim it down to the 8 by 10 size so that it will fit into a frame. So this is my watercolor paper. Watercolor paper has two sides, especially cold press watercolor paper. It has a rough side and it has a smooth side. I am going to be working on the rough side. You can work on either side. It really depends on your preference of what you want. I kind of like that rough texture look when my watercolor piece is done. The next thing you're going to need to do is pick a design. And I was trying to think of what is the easiest way to pick a design. So what I did is I went online and I looked for free watercolor pages. So I came up with all kinds of them. So this is the design that I did on my piece here. This is the design that I'm going to work today. Now, mind you, when you print these off online, they're going to print out on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Because we're working on a slightly smaller piece, I actually had to reduce my paper by 90% on the copier. So it is reduced by 10% down to 90%. And that fits perfectly on my piece of watercolor paper. And all I did is hold the design up to the watercolor paper and just make sure that it's going to fit. So there is a bunch of possibilities. Things like this. You want the design to be somewhat open. Here, I should flip these around so they're right side up. You don't want too much detail in the design because you're really going to lose a lot of that. So you want really kind of an open design. So these are just some of the things that I printed off. And everybody will get to choose kind of their own design. There's the water, some dragonflies, some more flowers, a water lily. I thought the sun and moon was good. For something like this, what I would do is just trace the outline. I would not trace the eyes or anything because all that will be lost in the transfer. So things like that. You can do something like this. What I would do is just I would draw the design but not the outline frame and just let it extend and then just extend my lines out to the edge of my paper. So the possibilities are endless. You could do words. I printed off a bunch of those. So those would be kind of fun to do. So just keep in mind that you can do just about anything with that. So what we're going to do is we need to take our design and transfer it to our watercolor paper. And how we're going to do that is by kind of creating our own graph paper. So what we're going to do is you're going to just take a pencil And I kind of started this because I didn't want it to take forever for me to do this while I was filming. You're just going to take the side of your pencil and just scribble all over the back on the back side of your design. And it doesn't have to be, you know, really solid or really perfect. You just need enough to cover what your design is. And then to make sure that you have everything, you can just hold it up to a window or some light to make sure that you have everything covered. And I've got just a couple spots up in here that I still need to grab hold of with some pencil behind. So I'm just going to extend that out a little bit. Okay, so now I have that all covered with pencil. Then I'm going to take and lay it kind of over my paper and decide where do I want this design on my piece of paper. So I think right about there is going to be good. And then what I'm going to do is take a piece of like painter's tape. This is basically a painter's tape. It's just used in the craft world. And I'm actually going to tack it off on my clothing a little bit. And then I'm going to just tape this down to my design, just a piece of tape at the top, so that I can actually, it will work like a hinge. I can actually pick up my piece of paper and make sure that my design is transferring. So then what you're going to do is you are going to just outline your design with your pencil. And what that does is when it's basically like, for people who remember graphing paper, it used to be kind of a blue paper. It's just going to transfer. And I'm not going to worry about these center lines because, again, some of the detail is going to get lost. So we're just going to take and completely go over our design. And then, because I have the hinge on there, I can actually see, it might be really faint, but I can actually see that the design is transferring. All right, so I am going to continue to do this. For the video, I probably will speed this up and put some music to it so that you don't have to sit and listen to me talk while I'm transferring my design. Okay, so it looks like I have the whole design transferred. You can see the whole thing. It's really light in pencil, but that's really all I need. Now I can take off my design and set that off to the side. The next thing you're going to do is take a black Sharpie marker, and we're just basically going to outline our pencil lines. And I chose this design because I figured it wouldn't take me so long to do all the tracing and transferring. So this is a Sharpie fine point. This is about the size that you want. You don't want to go too much smaller because you want some thickness to your lines. So this is the one that I recommend. All right, so then you're basically just going to go over your design completely in black marker. So I'm just going to take and transfer. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect. If you're not completely over your pencil lines, we can just erase anything. Kind of run down my stem here. And again, I'll set this to some music while I do this so that you don't have to sit and listen to me chat. Okay, we now have our main design all set. Now comes kind of the fun part. I just grab a piece of scrap paper here. So as you notice, we have all these other lines going through the design. What we're going to do is you're just going to start taking your marker and you're just going to draw lines through your design. Now I keep a piece of scrap paper because I like to come off the edge of the paper, but I don't want to get marker all over everything. So you're just going to continue this way, drawing lines across and through your design just randomly. There is no rhyme or reason to this. You just want to draw a bunch of lines. And that's where the fun part actually comes in. Trying to stay. Let's see, we need some over here. And probably something up in here. Let's see, how do I want to do that? Let's go this way. And I said this is just really random. Just flip your paper around. And I sometimes try to be a little too controlled with this because that's just me, but it's a good experiment in just letting things go and go where they might be. If it seems like, you don't want to get them too close together, but you don't want not enough, I should say. You want to make sure you've got enough of them going through that it'll look more like a stained glass design. I think we need one more down there. And actually, I think that looks pretty good. So now, the fun part, another fun part that we're going to do, once you have all your lines on there and you're satisfied with the spacing and how things look, then wherever you have a point in the design, you're going to change it to a U. So think of it like this. So there's a point and I'm going to turn it into a U, and I'm actually just going to fill that in with my marker. And this is a little bit time consuming, and it does, I find it calming. Maybe not everybody will do that, depends on how much you like to putz with things. So wherever there is a point, you're going to draw a U. And I'm going to bring this back in because I think you can see it better on here. If you look, there are no cross sections that are not curved. And that's kind of what makes it look like stained glass to me. So I'm going to continue on making all of my points into U's. So we'll be back after we get that done. Thanks. Okay, everybody, I'm coming back in. I am just about finished doing all my curved lines. There was just a couple things that I thought I needed to mention. So as you're doing these, sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually just kind of trace around the spot. And I wanted to show you kind of what I do at the edges of the paper. I like to fan those out just a little bit. And so then I've got one here. And now this is my stem, so I'm going to leave that as is. But like I'll come through here, and it's okay to thicken up your lines. They're really just there as a guide, but then I'll like flange that out and color that in. And it just gives a little more interest to the edges. But you can see that it really changes as you go through and round out all these pointy areas. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, I try to go through and clean up my edges a little bit. But this is what I mean by I'll kind of trace that area, and then the area where it's curved I'll just fill in. Oop, I've got one more down here that I missed. Okay, so this is where we're going to leave it for today. We've got all our lines curved. So part 2 will be on May 13th. We'll have the video up as well as the in-person class. And then we will start painting. Hang on to your design piece, because as you can see, once you get all these lines in here, it's very easy to lose your design in all of this. So it's nice to be able to have this to reference back to when we go to paint, so that I can see, okay, I should have a leaf here and a leaf here. And then once you see this, you can pick out the design on here. The other thing I wanted to mention is when you get real small areas like this, if it's not part of the main design, so like this is a main part of my leaf, so I wouldn't want to fill in all those small holes, but like up in here where there's some other spots, you can actually just color those all the way in black. And you'll be able to see some of that on here, that I have like some smaller areas that were so small that I just filled them in with the black. But I don't want it to detract from my design by doing that. So, you know, spots like this, I'm going to leave those little open areas in there because that is the base part of my leaf. So just keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to mention was it doesn't necessarily have to be a design underneath. You can take something as simple as doing a circle design like this. All I did is just take different size cups, trace around them so that the circles overlapped, and then I'm going back in, and I don't have them all done yet, but I'm going back in and then going back with the marker and changing all those points to a U. And I'm going to do that whole thing, and then I can just paint it in. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific design. You can make something more abstract using circles or squares, or you could just simply take your marker and draw squiggles all over the paper and then just curve the edges and then paint it in however you want. So keep that in mind when you're choosing what you want to do. It really can be very abstract. And again, I'd like to thank, although I don't know her, Andrea.Nelson.art for the great idea that this came out of. So I really want to give her credit because that is where I saw the idea. All right, so that is it for today. Hang on to your design until May 13th, and then we will be back to paint. So thanks everybody for joining me. We will see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.